Oh, goody.
Alright, what's going on everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So in this one, I want to talk a little bit about the case for unnerfing High Evolutionary. It's no secret that when High Evo came out, he was incredibly overpowered, especially relative to the context of the game at the time. This isn't going to be a full deep dive history lesson. I'll save that for later on in the Snap History series. But in general, when High Evo came out, it definitely erred on the stronger side with a lot of its designs. And as a result of this, a number of the evolved cards in High Evo have been nerfed over time. One of the awesome things about High Evo and why people were so excited for it when it came out was the fact that it was essentially a deck in a box. It really helped with a lot of the pain points of Snap's acquisition system, especially for newer players. Because all the High Evolutionary evolved cards were basic cards you got early on in the game, just by using your tokens or opening caches to get High Evo essentially got you a whole deck. Obviously there were some cards that you could get as upgrades to it, like Magic or She-Hulk, which were in Series 3, but even if you didn't have access to those cards, you still had a more than functional deck with just a lot of the basic cards. For that reason, High Evo kind of was the #1 recommendation of more veteran players to people who were newer or returning to the game. There just really weren't any other cards that essentially gave you a whole deck without having to purchase multiple cards. And while Arsham has kind of filled that role more recently, Arsham is still a deck that gets significantly better if you have access to more other high pool cards, like Blob, Eliath, Loki, etc. Well, in general, High Evo is still mainly upgraded by Series 3 cards. There are some new variants of it, running like Ajax and whatnot, but the core concept of Evo just being like a reasonable thing to do with basic cards remains the same. The power level's gotten a lot higher in Marvel Snap over time, and as a result of that, Evo has really struggled to keep up compared to how it used to. Even with its hardest counter in something like Luke Cage getting nerfed and changed a number of times, it hasn't been enough for the archetype to really find too much success in the modern era of Snap. We did see in recent months they did attempt to give a little bit of help to the archetype, changing High Evolutionary's body from a 4/4 to a 4/6. The 4/4 body on original High Evo was just so bad, but the idea made sense where it was trying to compensate for the fact that it was giving all these other cards a lot of strength. With those evolved cards not having the strength they once did, it's pretty reasonable to make the body for High Evo a little bit more impactful, essentially being the same as a vanilla 4/6 like the Thing. And the extra stats from the 4-cost body become even a little bit more relevant with the recent buff to Man-Thing, who has natural High Evo synergy. That said, making the key card that enables the archetype a bit less like Baku the Moon Eater in terms of stats from Hearthstone isn't really what the archetype was exactly hoping for. And there have been hints from the developers that High Evo could use a little bit of a boost. So today we're going to quickly run through the changes that were made to High Evo over the years, as well as the ones that I think can be fairly safely reverted. So in total, 3 out of the 7 evolved High Evo cards have been nerfed. This includes Wasp, the Thing, and Hulk himself. Originally, Wasp provided 2 negative affliction hits compared to the one it had now. The Thing was the next nerfed card where it still provided the same amount of negative affliction hits, but previously the opponent didn't need to have 3 different cards down on the field in order for the affliction hit to land on each one of them. So even if they only had 1 card down, all 3 affliction hits would go on that 1 card, as opposed to today where it only hits once per card. And last but not least, the evolved Hulk was the final card that was nerfed in High Evo. Originally, High Evo Hulk actually had an ongoing ability at the time, so it was able to proc even when it wasn't in play or in your hand, which was way more powerful. When the initial nerfs to High Evo happened, the power level of the game was definitely quite a bit lower. Evolved Hulk was essentially kind of the biggest thing, often growing bigger than Infinite at a time where people weren't even really playing Infinite out of maybe some people doing it in High Evo. This is also back before we had access to the new and improved Magic, so Magic wasn't always as a core part of High Evo strategies as she is nowadays, because she used to cost 5, which was pretty awkward for the deck. And Wasp being a 0/3 that also enabled getting your big abomination for cheaper was also super duper strong. Nowadays though, with things being so strong like new Loki, Arshem, all these powerful 3/5s, new Man-Thing, the power level of Snap is just undeniably a lot higher than it was 1 year ago. And though you could also make a similar argument that, well, maybe instead of tuning up High Evo, we should just tune down a lot of the higher powered stuff, I think if one of these two things is more likely to happen, it's that they're going to tune up some High Evo stuff to help compensate it, rather than trying to tune down all these new flashy cards that they want to sell to the player base. And this is pretty normal for card games. Card games do naturally just experience some gradual power creep over time because players want new cards to be impactful and playable, as well as being fun. And generally, the easier way of doing that is just by making sure that there are some extra stats or some stronger abilities stapled onto those bodies. As such, I think they could actually get away with undoing all three of the High Evo nerfs here. If we're breaking it down into ones that actually seem like super safe for versions, it's probably just the Thing and Wasp. I think those cards both would make like a reasonable impact in helping the archetype without actually making it like kind of busted. The Hulk, I think you can make a more reasonable argument for why they might want to leave it the same. They might like the fact that Hulk and Red Hulk are kind of two opposite sides of the coin, where Hulk rewards you for getting that extra energy floated, whereas Red Hulk punishes you for it. So I could see where they might not want to make that change because they like how these cards mirror each other and both don't work when they're in the deck. But if we're talking on strictly power level, I don't think the heights that the old Hulk got up to would actually be that game-breaking compared to some of the stuff we see today. One of the best things about digital card games like Snap is the ability to be able to buff and nerf cards accordingly depending on the context of the time. A really good example of this was the change to Apocalypse a while back when Discard was one of the best decks in the game. He got 2 power shaved off, and later down the line when Discard wasn't having as much success, they were freely able to give him that +2 power back. And I think that same kind of situation applies here. It would almost certainly become the strongest part of High Evolutionary again, but the Hulk is arguably the most iconic character in that deck, and so it kind of makes sense to have him be this big finisher centerpiece. Even if they were to revert all three of these changes, I'm not actually sure how successful it would be in the current meta. No doubt it would be better, but would it be better enough to counter some of the other really powerful decks going around? But more importantly, giving new and returning players a really good option to have as just a solid deck that they can play while they're still working on building out their collection of other cards. Right now, Arshem is kind of filling that role, but I think the more cards you can have like this, the better off for the game it is. Because if there's one pain point that I think the community is definitely centered in on in Marvel Snap, it's that oftentimes when people leave the game or when a new player joins the game, it is a real struggle to catch up and feel competitive and relevant if you just are behind on resources. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up for this video. I thought this was a fun little topic to talk about, and I'd be curious to hear what you think about it in the comments below. Do you think all these cards can get reverted for High Evolutionary? Do you think they should maybe revert 2 of them, leave the Hulk alone? Why do you think that? I'd love to hear it. I think it's an interesting topic, and since we have had some little hints from the developers, they are considering doing something like this to help juice up High Evo a little bit more since it's Fall from Grace. I figured it'd be a fun little topic of discussion. Who knows? We're getting a patch tomorrow, and it's entirely possible that we could see some High Evo unnerfs there. Because for those who don't know, when we get these patches that aren't OTAs, they enable the developers to do changes that require some adjustments to visual effects. And in High Evo's case, the changes around unnerfing these cards would require them to adjust the visual effects, like seeing the double proc on Wasp, or where the debris from the Thing ends up hitting. So to me, it seems more likely that if we're going to get a change like that, it's probably going to happen in a full patch, rather than the normal over-the-air balance updates. That's going to wrap it up for this one though. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.